It's not in terms of rules that then bind on the government, because the CMIT was not negotiating any agreement that would be in itself formally. It was not a negotiation at all. It was not a negotiation because to be a negotiation, it had to have all the member states be representative on the committee. Each member state, officially, like in the UN, representing its government, its formal policy, whether they believe it or not. I mean, if you're a diplomat, you may constantly say things that you don't believe in. Your job is to explain your government, even when you never voted for that government and you completely think they're stupid. You just don't dig them. Your job as a diplomat is to explain and convince other people that this is a great policy. Right? You're selling your country to foreigners. That's not what happened on CMIT. They were not selling their government's policies. You read in the protocols, they say, you know, you're right, this doesn't make sense. I'll bring them back home and say, you know, this doesn't make sense. I don't know if they'll change the policy, but clearly it doesn't make sense. So this was not a negotiating forum, it was not an intergovernmental forum, and it cannot be explained by the other theories, and that's why we think that principal agent analysis could be helpful in this case.
So then, the extension of your argument then is that because there was this slippage, there was later a loss of credibility, and so I'm not sure where you're going.
Now, credibility was a task to be achieved. They were delegated the task of maintaining credibility for the process. The credibility was not there, not because of the CMIT, because of the time inconsistency problem that was built into the issue area. Time inconsistency, there are two kinds of credibility issues. One is the time inconsistency issue. Ever gone on a diet? You want to be thin, or at least some of us do. You seriously want to be thin. You hate the way you look in the mirror. Not anyone here, but then the next cupcake is so great. The next hamburger, you got to have it. So you keep reneging on your promises. You're cheating on yourself. You have a time inconsistency problem. It happens all the time to all of us, in policy and in private. We make commitments, marital commitments. Some cheating. So this is time inconsistency. You know that you rationally want something for the long term, but in the short term you have strong incentive to deviate. That's one kind of credibility. The other credibility problem is cross-sectional credibility, which means not with a time dimension, but in terms of the way costs and benefits from the policy distribute. If you have the costs concentrate on one sector, but the benefits spread out on many, you have a credibility problem. Think of trade liberalization. Consumers like completely free trade. Yes, we love Chinese shirts. They're so cheap. We could all afford more when we buy cheap things. But if the cost of this is then focused on a particular town that loses their jobs, you have a credibility problem because these people are going to be very determined to get their jobs back, fight this policy, and the rest of the people are not going to get organized to counter them. So that's a second. This second kind of credibility did not really apply here. This was a time inconsistency issue. It's not because of the CMIT. It was there to begin with. The CMIT was delegated the task through this regime of derogations and revisions to give credibility to the process. And most importantly, the review of the revisions and the derogations. But that's not slippage. That was a delegated task which they performed loyally. They also performed loyally the coordination task. Where they slipped was in discussing the things that they were not supposed to discuss. They were discussing things beyond their mandate.
So I guess I'm sort of piggybacking on the noise question then. So I accept that there was slippage, but okay, so.
The question to begin with, the puzzle here, is how come